All right. So far. Now, time for our headliner. I am so excited to bring to all of you the amazing Kat Cole. Kat's storied career began at Hooters restaurants, where she accelerated past all sorts of norms to be a vice president by the age of 26. She's perhaps best known for her progressive success inside Focus Brands. Joined in 2010 as president of the Cinnabon brand, but moved into roles group president, focused on the global multi-channel division, which was across so many great brands that we all love: Auntie Anne's, Cinnabon, Moe's, Schlotzsky's, McAllister's, and Carvel. She then transitioned to be COO and president, leading the company's multi-billion-dollar businesses across franchising and operations and licensing and manufacturing and e-commerce. She has just recently stepped away from that. Today, she is on the board of Human Co., a SPAC, I love this, that is focused on building brands for healthier living. She has just joined the board of Slice, where they are focused on transforming independent pizzerias through technology. She's a board director at Milk Bar, a sweet shop that is both e-commerce and in 5 other markets with brick and mortar. This woman has won so many awards from the Women's Food Service Forum, from Georgia and national restaurant associations, but all of that is the corporate Kat. Kat herself is a passionate advocate for women, for youth, for really bringing individuals forward. She works with organizations such as the United Nations Foundation and the World Economic Forum. Her humanitarian efforts in Eastern Africa focus on not only developing women, but transforming villages. She is a believer in conscious capitalism. She is open, transparent, and vulnerable, a great storyteller, and a fantastic daughter to be part of our program today. Kat, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and happy Daughter's Day to everyone, and to the parents who are joining with them. As I'll share, I am an incredibly proud daughter of an amazing woman who navigated a pretty tough time in order to give her daughters a better life than what she had. So I will share what I think are some lessons from unexpected places, a little bit about my story and background, then give some high points of what I learned and observed from navigating and leading Focus Brands, this large multinational company, through 2020, and most importantly, looking around the corner to what I think that means for business and for brands and for women and for individuals throughout the rest of this year and beyond. So as you just heard, I just wrapped up a 10-year career at Focus Brands, amazing company here in Atlanta, owned by a phenomenal private equity firm called Rourke Capital, also Atlanta-based. And I joined them as a president of Cinnabon when I was 31 years old. And so they took a chance on a young, developing, growing, and driven woman to run a very large business and, in fact, turn it around out of the recession. So I joined Cinnabon, inherited a company that was based in malls at the heart of the recession. And if you know anything about periods of recession, when people have compressed discretionary income, there are 2 things they stop doing: shopping and traveling. And Cinnabon happened to be mostly based in malls and airports. So big challenges from a revenue perspective, even bigger challenges because the system was franchised and not corporately owned. So a lot of small business owners navigating a very difficult time. And some of those system shocks in 2010 were similar and prepared me for the system shocks of 2020, a full decade later. But we came out of that. We grew the brand and business, launched innovative products to help that brand grow, helped invest in the franchisees so that they could be stronger as revenue would come back, invested in technology that would allow the business to be resilient many years later. And what is a well-known part of our turnaround story of that brand is that we famously launched products in grocery chains, in other restaurant chains. We had products at Taco Bell, at Burger King, now at Pizza Hut, Cinnabon Coffee with K-Cups and Green Mountain, still their number 5 flavor today, and many other products in other channels. And Cinnabon still today is the world's largest omni-channel restaurant brand, meaning it's a restaurant brand first, but it is expressed in these other revenue channels and points of distribution more than any other restaurant brand in the world. Several $billion in consumer product sales in total. So something I'm very proud of. Happy to answer questions about the turnaround and growth of that brand and business in difficult times, and then how it continued to grow through boom times. After that, that model of taking a brand into other channels beyond its legacy, these innovation channels, became a clear opportunity for other brands beyond Cinnabon, and Focus Brands and Rourke recognized that. And so I became group president of the parent company to build out the infrastructure to duplicate that success with Cinnabon and take Auntie Anne's into grocery stores and Jamba Juice and Moe's and do the same thing, bringing a version of our brand's most popular products to other places where people really wanted to find them. Incredible brand building and quite a profitable business, but not easy to do. After doing that for a few years, hired a successor who would become the president of that group. And as you heard, I became president and COO, which meant I had 9 presidents reporting to me who each ran the individual brands, divisions, and businesses for a total of just under $5 billion in sales around the world, 7,000 locations, 7 brands, 60 plus countries. And so if I can answer any questions about that business and where it might be going, I'm happy to. But I think what's more important about where I am and the professional level that I reached is how I got there, and more of the personal story. And so when I was 9 years old, my mom came to me. I'm the oldest of 3 girls, so I have 2 younger sisters. When I was 9 years old, my mom came to me and said, "That's it, I'm done, we're leaving." And what she meant was we were leaving my dad. My father was and is today a very good man, but at the time was an alcoholic and not able to be a good husband or father. I was in multiple car accidents by the time I was 9 years old. And so it wasn't safe, and it was very difficult for my mom. The tough part was my mom only had a low wage job, and it was very difficult for her to think about going out on her own. And so it took her to be motivated and almost scared enough to figure it out. And what was interesting, when she came to me as the oldest daughter, which she thought I would cry and be upset at the age of 9, when she told me, I did not cry. I looked at her and said, "What took you so long?" At the age of 9. And the lesson in that is that the people who are closest to the action, which is true in families and communities and is true in business, the people who are closest to the action know what the right thing to do is long before the leader ends up making a decision. It's just the way things are. So something I've become obsessed with is staying very close to the people who are close to the action. So the moment I have the inkling or the idea that something needs to change or be invested in or get better, it allows me to fuel that idea faster if I stay close to people who are doing the work, and come to realize that that is, in fact, an important area for me to make a decision or invest my time, as opposed to just thinking about it and then talking myself out of it and letting more traditional priorities take precedent. All the while, people who are doing the work are very well aware of the opportunities that could mean growth, or the problems and the challenges that need to be addressed that only the leader has the authority to address. So we left. My mom fed us on a food budget of $10 a week for 3 years, a family of 3 girls. The food budget was $10 a week. We ate a lot of beanie weenies and potted meat, and some of you might not even know what that is. But, you know, as far as I remember, it was incredibly positive, and probably things we wouldn't put on the top of our Whole Foods shopping list, and that places like Whole Foods would not dare carry. But it was fine, and it worked out. And I remember my mom always being so positive. And so I am a proud daughter because of seeing her resilience, making the tough decisions to do the right thing, even though it meant reducing our economic quality of life. And then watching her move up in her own company years later, marry a wonderful man who became my stepfather, and watching my dad go through an even more difficult time over the years, ending up in jail, really having a period of self-destruction, but getting better. And now he's healthy and he's clean, and I'm so grateful for that. And so personally, I grew up in an environment that shaped me to be resilient, to be grateful for what I have. And I was in roles of responsibility and leadership at a very young age. Because my mom was working 3 jobs, I was taking care of my sisters from the time I was 9 years old. And it shaped me in more ways that are positive than are negative. I started working at the age of 15 because I had to. Then I became a waitress, as you heard, at the age of 18. And that was my 3rd job, actually, by that point. I was the first person in my family to get into college. I was an electrical engineering and computer sciences major. And then it just so happened the restaurant company I was working with was growing around the world. And at the age of 19, I started opening franchises around the world. And I was traveling so much for work that I was failing college. And so I'm a college dropout. Don't encourage it if you don't have to. But I was traveling so much that I had a compelling alternative. And I always tell people, yes, I dropped out and I later went back to school. But that's because I literally had a compelling path that I was on where I had growth and opportunity and income. If you don't have that, stay in school, because it's the ultimate platform lifter, the ultimate path to independence and choice, and it's such a privilege to have an education, and certainly a higher education. So I moved up in that company. By the time I was 26, I was vice president of that organization, doing $800 million in revenue, helped grow the company around the world. And then it connects with what I've already shared with you, became president of Cinnabon in 2010. And so there are themes and lessons from that background and my personal story. But I think most importantly, especially for the daughters who are listening, I think the lesson is that people who seem to be the most successful, no matter their circumstances, whether they're very well off at home or they're going through a tough time or they're just not sure about where their life is going, I have found that those who are most successful, no matter their circumstance, seem to have command over 4 mindsets. Humility, which is the awareness that you don't know everything. None of us do. And we always need other people to be better. Curiosity, an actual desire to learn. And so humility and curiosity kind of go together. On the other side, though, is courage and confidence. And courage is the willingness to speak up even when you're nervous, and even when it may be uncomfortable or you think it may be unpopular. And confidence is not knowing that you know it. Confidence isn't about believing you're right. Confidence for me is just the belief I can figure it out. It's a humble confidence. And that's different than someone who comes in and acts like they know it all and walks over people and takes advantage of others. That's a different type of confidence that I think has been glamorized in the past, but no longer. So those are some lessons that I have, and I know we'll have plenty of time to answer questions. Now leaping to 2020, the headlines of what I saw in navigating a demand shock where all of a sudden the businesses are closed around the world in 65 countries with franchisees who are largely small business people, is that to lead through crisis, what people need is clarity. They don't necessarily need positivity, because positivity in a very scary and uncertain environment seems simply disconnected from reality. And so I don't encourage positivity in some situations. I do encourage focusing on possibility. So a possibility filter as opposed to positivity, and then giving people clarity. We were very clear. We need to protect cash and protect people. Those are the 2 things we are going to need to live, to be in business another day. And so everything was about those 2 things. And that helped us protect the small businesses and the larger enterprise and the brands to come out very quickly of that demand shock. And thank goodness we had upgraded our talent years prior. Thank goodness we had invested in technology before we needed it, because as the world slightly opened back up, our sales jumped far faster than everyone else's. Our franchisees and most of our brands, even those in malls, were not struggling the way that others were, because we had invested in things that connected to trends that were happening long before 2020. 2020 just accelerated it. Digital infrastructure, online ordering, again, more innovative talent, more progressive thinkers that could change faster in the company. And I was so glad that I had the team that I had. going through those challenges. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that rocky boat in those rocky seas with anyone else. And so it's just a reminder that if you're on the fence of talent in the company that needs to be coached, developed, upgraded, whatever it is, now is the time. Do not wait until it's absolutely needed. I could have made some of those moves even sooner and benefited the company. And then as I look, given 2020 and the challenges there, into the last part of 21, one of the things I want to share excitement about and sound an alarm is this idea of possibilities for individuals in the world. And for the daughters who are listening, the beautiful thing is there are so many opportunities to create your own business, monetize your creations, whether it's Etsy or Patreon or any of these sites, write your own newsletter on Substack. I mean, monetizing and getting value for your knowledge and your creations has never been easier. And so there are many paths to supporting yourself from an income perspective. The watch out for this is that while the economy has been challenged, the employment environment has been tough, and employees mostly in most organizations are grateful for the roles that they have. Be careful. As the world gets back to growing, I don't like saying getting back to normal. I think where we'll end up is much better than the previous normal. But as the world gets back to growing, there is mounting research and evidence from websites such as The Muse, which is a millennial, Gen X, and Gen Z career site, LinkedIn, and others, that people are looking. They are looking because they have seen who their employers really are through these tough times, for the good and for the bad. And as the world gets back to growing, and as technology makes finding talent and finding opportunities so much easier, those companies that have shown who they are and not stood up for their employees, all types of employees, and not learned about the challenges and personal needs of their employees and stepped up to support them, they will lose their best talent. And the companies that have will gain that talent. It is being called the Great Shuffling. The Great Reshuffle of employment is coming at the back half of 21. Now is the time, if there aren't initiatives and programs around compensation and equity and development and diversity, I'd get it in place now before you get to August. And I do believe we're going to see, we're already seeing the searching happening and some of the matchmaking in other industries. I do believe this is an opportunity for amazing companies to recruit and retain amazing talent of all kinds, and a big watch out for companies that might not have evolved at the rate their competition has. So with that, I'll pause. I know we've got some questions. Would love Helene to come back up, and we will dig into some of these topics and more.
I'd love. Thank you. I always love your vulnerability and your focus on both the past and the future, Kat. I want to go back to. It was so powerful to me, the 4 elements that you framed: humility, curiosity, courage, and confidence. I want to dig into curiosity, because I have heard lots of folks comment on that in this world we're in right now, where there's discomfort and disengagement, that curiosity can be a great power skill. Like how do you develop curiosity if you aren't naturally curious?
I do believe that curiosity is easier to develop if you might not have a lot of curiosity, but if you have humility. It is much more difficult if you are low on the humility spectrum. That is tough for some to admit. Curiosity may not come naturally. I mean, humility is the foundation of curiosity. In order to demonstrate curiosity, to ask questions, one must first believe there is value in asking others questions and asking for help. So I would start with a gut check around levels of humility, moments of humility. And this is not said with judgment or criticism. Often those who have been the most successful, rightly so, believe that the things that have contributed to their success over time are likely to contribute to their success going forward, which often means asking fewer people for help. It often means losing, sadly, the beginner's mind, the lifelong learning mindset. And sometimes it means over time, when we've been wildly successful, and I've experienced this over time, that it feels a lot more risky to be wrong because others are so used to us being right. Others are so used to us having the answers, when in reality, it is the people who ask the most questions, who seem to have this muscle for learning, lifelong learning, that are the most powerful in every sense of the word. Both literal power, because they are shaping things instead of reacting to them, and perceived power, because others want to be on their team and feel valued around them and don't feel that they're just not needed in the shadow of this amazingly successful person. So I would first gut check on humility and just ask, am I so successful that maybe my humility muscle is a little weak? Or if it's not, is there a perception of me that I'm not curious? Is the fact that I'm the leader or the boss or whatever you want to call it, and constantly in a position to decide and direct, unintentionally creating this force field around me that reduces the frequency that I get challenged, that people bring me new ideas, things like that. So I have developed a lot of practices and techniques for self-reflection to help me catch when that is developing.
So that's what I was just going to ask. Do you have go-to questions? Do you have go-to questions that will propagate that generation of ideas and input?
Yeah, one is when I check in with my team regularly, I ask a very specific question. And the words matter here because they tend to optimize candor. And it is, tell me one thing, only one thing. I don't need a list. The world's hard enough. I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. I have plenty of things I need to do. Tell me one thing I can do differently to be a better partner, leader, whatever the role is, to be a better partner for you. And the words matter. I'm not saying, what could I be better at? Or what am I bad at? I'm not putting feeling words in there necessarily. It's one thing I can do differently, which means to stop, start, or continue, to be a better partner for you, to be a better leader for you. I want just one thing, and I'm going to work on that. And I hope you notice that I get better at that. So that's one question you can ask regularly that I have for 10 years, and it's powerful, both to my husband on a monthly basis in our monthly check-ins, as well as to my team. The other is I practice something called the Hotshot Rule. And the Hotshot Rule is simply this. It's, I envision someone I admire in my role tomorrow. Like I disappear, they take over my job and my team. What is one thing, back to the one thing, what is one thing and the first thing they would see and do differently because they see it with fresh eyes? And for whatever reason, when I practice the exercise, envisioning them seeing my world through their eyes, the answer is obvious because it's in the back of my mind and kind of like mom's realization. I sort of know it, but there's something keeping me from making it a priority, probably because it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as other things that have been big problems. And in the scheme of my perspective, it doesn't have the prioritization that it should have because other people see it more acutely and as more of an eminent need, whereas I see it in the context of my last 10 years. And so it's just not as bad as other things that have been bad. And so this hotshot rule, envisioning a hotshot in my role, I say, well, what's one thing you would do if Helene, you were in my role? It comes to mind, and then I take action on that within 24 hours. And then I tell my team. Yeah. I say, hey, just so you guys, sometimes I say I practice the hotshot rule. My team knows what that means. If your team doesn't know, you can just say, I was thinking. I was thinking that if one of you were in my role, this is something that you would prioritize or take action on, and I just want you to know I did it. And what's funny is every time I practice the hotshot rule and I tell my team, someone in the group has some reaction that is almost identical to the reaction I gave my mom, which is, what took you so long?
Yeah. I love that because you literally have operationalized giving yourself license to do that thing. It's inspiring to me to think about that. I have before heard you say that you have a particular comfort for living in paradoxes, that you simultaneously can focus on healthy lifestyle and cinnamon buns and living in a space where all of that coexists. How have you built that comfort with paradox and what is it about?
I give credit to my mom, seeing her juggle so many realities, needing to be the happy mom at home and having fun with her daughters and yet working herself to the bone. There's something about those things that don't always seem to go hand in hand, that that I think shaped me here. And it gave me confidence that you can be many things at once. But I've also learned as I've grown up that doesn't make sense to everyone. I've had people call me a hypocrite using the example you just gave. How can you be about health and wellness and run Cinnabon? And what I've learned to believe is that if I don't make sense to everyone, that is not my problem. And the connection between those two things is me. And who would you rather have running a sweet treat brand? Someone who does care about health and wellness and is more likely to do things like launch smaller portions and protect the quality of the ingredients, or someone who doesn't care about those things? And so to me, those things make perfect sense. It is so obvious to me how I could help build Hooters restaurants and be one of the most vocal advocates for women in the workplace, and how I can be a professional running multi-billion-dollar private equity organizations and be a burner that goes to Burning Man and gets married at Burning Man and has tattoos. These things are all connected through me, and I recognize and have learned how to take the positives from one part of my life and actually make me better for these other things I'm involved in, instead of feel that I need to be so extreme, so one note, so one way, that there is no permission or license to explore. Even now, after running these large businesses, part of this season that I'm in is angel investing, advising startups, in addition to my board roles, and really investing my time in new interactive audio social platforms, one in particular called Clubhouse. And some people think, whoa, what is an executive of such large companies with such a big professional background doing on what is considered a social media app, holding conversations? And to me, it's so obvious, but to others, it doesn't compute. There aren't a lot of examples of people doing what I do. And while sometimes that brings moments of reflection and even discomfort and makes me think, are they right? And should I consider this? And is there something I should be doing that makes it more natural? On the other hand, I remind myself that others understanding me, while it is important because it opens up opportunities for supporters, in the purest sense is not my problem if I believe in it. And that gives me great comfort and confidence and license to have a beginner's mind all the time, to jump into something that others who are my peers will be very late to the game on. But I will be early because I don't mind it looking odd. I don't mind being the unusual one. I don't mind being the oldest person in the room or the youngest person in the room. I don't mind being the first woman in the group. I just, as so many of us have famously heard, I just want to make sure I'm not the last woman or youngest or oldest or whatever. Continuing to bridge worlds is a passion of mine. And I'm okay with being at the top of my game in one sector and being the least known, least skilled person in another group. And I do believe, despite the fact that doesn't quite click for everyone from the outside and make sense, it is something that brings me great joy.
Love it. So I saw in Forbes that you said crisis is my jam. So I got to say, we're sitting here, March of 2021. You've talked a lot about, you just started to talk about your future. You've talked a lot about your past. How does knowing that crisis is your jam, how does that shape how you look at your future and what you'll do next?
Yeah, I thought the plan was to leave Focus several years before I actually did. And I kept getting sucked back in because we had some great growth opportunities. We had the need to upgrade our talent, and I took that very personally. I'm heavily emotionally invested in that company and financially invested in the company, so I care deeply about its success long after I'm gone. And so I took those leadership responsibilities very seriously. But I knew 3 years ago I would take a season, whatever that meant, I think a year at least, to pull forward these other things I've had going on for a very long time, but that have been a backseat to running a company. And now they are the front seat. And all along those, I knew it would be in three buckets. One is boards and advisory. So, increase the number of boards and advisory roles to companies. The second is what I call content and community. I'm finishing my book. That's due to Simon & Schuster in just a month and a half, and will be published in early 22, holding rooms on audio platforms and social platforms to provide mentoring and connection from one to many, writing my blog and newsletter on Substack called Checking In. These are all things I did as sort of a side hustle pastime that now are much more forward. And then my angel investing activity. My husband and I have invested in seed stage startups for quite some time. And I found with women in particular, and even in the Southeast, because angel investing has not been a big part of how people talk about deploying wealth, because it does have risk associated with it. You're investing in a company that is not on the public markets. It's not liquid. It's not, an asset, but the idea of taking my hard-earned dollars as a woman and evaluating what if that gets put into nonprofits and philanthropy, what if that might be invested in real estate, and what if that now might be invested in early stage companies, and how do I get comfortable with that risk? But it certainly has the potential to earn money in the future, sometimes quite a bit. And so getting good at being an angel investor, investing in early stage businesses, many of them founded in the Southeast and Atlanta, not all, and helping other women I know learn that they actually might be an accredited investor and they could be seed investing and angel investing alongside of me. That angel investing activity, I've been doing it for 8 years. I have 39 angel investments in seed and Series A stage companies, and am now able to make that a much more formal thing, talk about it more publicly, welcome amazing investors, men and women, I love, because I find there are so many women, especially in Atlanta, that are not in the angel investing game and could be and should be. And I want to see more women on the cap tables, as investors in these companies, because it's a way to provide generational wealth and also just plug into amazing networks of other investors and creators. Sometimes the investment's just worth the network. Yeah. And so those are my things right now: board and advisory, content and community, and angel investing. And they're actually very complementary to each other in a lot of ways. Creating content and community has led to some of my investments, and some of my investments have led to board and advisory work. So that is what I'm doing now. That is my season. That is what's next. Often back to the people putting you in a box thing, people say, oh, well, you've run these huge companies, your whole career. I can't wait after they hear what I'm doing now. And they say, well, I can't wait to hear what's next. Because in their mind, the only thing that could possibly be next is running another huge company. Yeah. And the reality is that's likely for me. It's possible, but it's not certain. I don't need to be the CEO of a large company to feel good about myself. I feel fantastic about myself with what I'm doing right now. I am having as much impact in different ways, but I'm having as much impact as I was running a multi-billion-dollar company. And if I decide to go back and run another large company, I'll be even better at doing it because of this swimming in this pool of high growth, highly relevant companies and founders, and understanding how brands are connecting today in a more intimate way with progressive technology. I'll be even better at it. Or I might decide that running this company that I'm running of investing and advising and board work and writing is more of a thing than just a season. But I've only been gone from Focus Brands for 8 weeks, so I'm not putting too much pressure on myself.
That's good. Yeah. Kat, I have loved this. I could talk to you all day, I'm absolutely sure. But thank you so much for, I really meant what I said at the top of our time. There's this incredible list of all of your accomplishments, but the you that is you, and your openness and your vulnerability and your willingness to share, and the passion that you have for other people so comes shining through. And I think it's so unbelievably powerful that you were here on Daughter Day to share these thoughts.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, what a day. What a day we have had.